Welcome everybody to our fourth session here of the RISE e-learning community. We have a really great session for you this afternoon. And I just want to recap from last week for those of you that were on or maybe not on, but that we had a self-advocate that spoke last week, and really a very powerful presentation who talked about how for her building a better economic future and all the services that she has used and living in Washington, D.C. and doing testimony and doing all sorts of consulting jobs. And I think, from the past plans to the ABLE to, using all of the benefits that were possible for her, and still the struggles. And what I got from that takeaway, because so much of our conversations here are looking at the financial education and the portfolio kind of all the asset building and education work that we could be offering people who are on public benefits. But she went beyond that, and she talked about, she needed some help at home. She needed housekeeping and cooking assistance, and she needed, some organization, and yet those services were not quite there for her. So, there's so much more than just what we're all talking about here each and every time we get together. Today, we're really lucky to have with us a seasoned leader. She's actually, leading and working with the National Pool Trust, group in the country that has formed, so that I think almost every state, and Yolanda can correct me after, has pool trust work going on. But she is 30 years working in the nonprofit sector, and she has been a leader in disability, criminal justice, and substance abuse work. She has been leading this particular trust for 17 years, Yolanda, I think, and I was privileged at one point to be on the board for this trust and saw it grow. And we're also honored today to have three beneficiaries, Terry, Rudolph, and Alvina, who work and have used the trust as part of their asset building, portfolio and structure in their life. And they're going to talk to us about, what's worked, what isn't worked, and really open it up to questions. So we really have, so much happening here, and I'm really glad you could all join us. I'm going to turn it over to Yolanda so that we can begin. So thank you so much, Yolanda. You want to do the next slide here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to share. So as Johnette mentioned, my name is Yolanda Mazik, and my focus today is to just really talk about pooled special needs trusts and special needs trusts in general, providing a general overview and why it's necessary for a lot of folks that are receiving public benefits. So when you leave today, you'll have an understanding of special needs trusts, what they are, the benefits that they protect, and how they work. So if we can just go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about, I just want to make sure, and if you can click again, I want to make sure that we first understand what a special needs trust is. Any kind of trust, whether it's a special needs trust or any kind of trust in the financial world or the legal world or arena, it is the same definition. A trust is a vehicle or an instrument or an arrangement between a person or an entity that holds assets and manages those assets on behalf of a person. Specifically for a pooled special or for a special needs trust, in order for a special needs trust to be recognized in the United States, there's a process that you have to go through. And the process is that Social Security and state Medicaid in the jurisdictions that you wish to serve in, they must review the document in order for them to put their stamp of approval on it, so that when assets are transferred into the trust, the public benefit the person's receiving will not be jeopardized. The trust protects the assets as well as the public benefits. So when I talk about public benefits, I'm talking specifically about supplemental security income, Medicaid, and subsidized housing. And there are rules that we have to follow. And this is really important for people to understand, because when Social Security and Medicaid review our document, we are into an agreement with them that we will follow their rules and their regulations when making disbursements on behalf of our beneficiaries in the trust. It's not always well received. And as a matter of fact, sometimes we disagree with a lot of the rules and regulations that those entities put upon us. But as the fiduciary, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are doing no harm and that we are following those rules and regulations as much as possible. And there are situations that we sort of bend the rules, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on in my presentation. So we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to do a basic overview of public benefits, because a lot of times, you know, someone will come to us and they want to establish a trust. And the first question we ask is, first, do you have a disability? And the next question is, what public benefits do you have? And a lot of times people are not quite sure what public benefit they have. So I like to go through the process to help people understand that there are means-tested benefits, meaning that it depends upon, you qualify for that benefit based upon your income and your assets, or there are needs-based benefits, simply because you have a disability and you may have worked somewhere and you are now require certain benefits based upon the hours that you've plugged in or your family member worked. So and you must have a Social Security or a railroad retirement connection, and that's with Social Security disability income. It's not means tested, or it is needs based. And you must have a Social Security and a railroad retirement connection. So if someone has SSDI and they come to the trust, then it allows us to make a lot of, or to use our discretion in a much broader sense with when it comes to their requests, because we don't have to worry about jeopardizing their SSI or their other means tested benefits because they have SSDI. You generally receive SSDI if you yourself worked and you have enough quarters and now you have a disability, or you have a disability and you are receiving your SSDI through your parents and they are retired. So you can receive SSDI. We love SSDI because we can pay rent. We can pay a lot more with the person for a person that has SSDI. And then there's also Social Security retirement, which is not means tested. And again, you must have a connection with Social Security and retirement benefits to connect to that or to receive that benefit. Usually people that are receiving Social Security, like my mom, you've retired, you've worked, you are 65 and older, and you are able to receive that Social Security retirement benefit. And of course, there are railroad disability benefits. Again, those are not means tested. Typically, if you had someone that worked for the railroad or received those paid in that system, then you would qualify to receive those benefits. We love those benefits as well because we don't have to worry about following the rules and regulations for SSI or Social Security related to SSI. Now I'm going to get into some of the means tested benefits, and that's SSI. SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. It is means tested and it is needs based. Means tested meaning that you have to be below a certain income and asset level to qualify for that benefit. And that's the key, because for folks that have a trust and they have SSI, Social Security put a lot of rules on us as far as how we can make disbursements from the trust without jeopardizing their public benefits. And that's really important for people to understand, because if we do pay for things or we make a disbursement that goes against their SSI or Social Security rules related to SSI, it can reduce the person's benefit by 1/3 if we're paying for housing, or it can reduce their benefit dollar for dollar after the first $20 that we provide them. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but our job is to make sure that we understand what each person's benefit is as a fiduciary, and we are adhering to those rules and regulations when making disbursements from the trust. Can we have the next slide? And then the next benefit is insurance benefit, insurance coverage. So if you have SSDI, then after 2 years of receiving your SSDI, you then qualify for Medicare. Medicare is not means tested, and you have to have a Social Security or retirement connection to qualify. Medicare has rules, but they're not rules that with us making a disbursement from the trust, we can jeopardize in any way. And then, of course, the other medical coverage would be state Medicaid. I say state Medicaid because, and that's really important, because each state, each Medicaid program is managed differently based upon the state that you're living in. So a lot of states have many different rules, and right now we have to follow and adhere to, and when I say we, I'm talking about Shared Horizons. We have to follow a lot of states: Maryland, DC, Georgia, Kentucky, where else? Tennessee. We have to make sure that we understand the Medicaid rules for each of those states, because they vary and they differ. And it could be a small sort of difference, but we as the fiduciary have to be aware of those little tiny changes per state before we make disbursements on behalf of our beneficiaries. So our job as a fiduciary, and any person that manages a special needs trust, it can be very complicated because there are so many rules we have to follow. And the last benefit that I want to talk about is HUD subsidized housing. Many of our beneficiaries qualify for subsidized housing, whether it is general housing or voucher program. And there are obviously other programs that you can qualify for through HUD. But they are, to qualify and to get the reduced rate, there's an income test used. And honestly, I've been doing this for 17 years, and I do not understand the formula that HUD Housing uses to determine whether or how a person, or how much a person will pay based upon their income or their benefit that they're receiving. And it can be quite complicated because HUD subsidized housing, they have their own crazy, I'm sorry, I don't know if there's anyone on this line that's associated with HUD, but it is an amazing journey because they have certain rules that if you pay for something on a regular basis, they're going to count it as income. it's convoluted. So a lot of times for beneficiaries that are receiving HUD subsidized housing, if they want us to pay their cable, we used to just pay it in a lump sum. And HUD housing caught on. So then they started even counting that. So right now we are probably in violation of some of our beneficiaries. And again, I'm going to just put it out there because I want you all to understand that we have to make some difficult decisions when managing the trust. But some decisions, if it's not in the best interest of the beneficiary and it is not for their well-being, or it does not enhance their quality of life, we begin to think of other ways that we can make disperse to ensure that they are able to keep the rate that they have for HUD subsidized housing, but also protecting the other benefits as well. So I think that that's really important. So that's an overview of the benefits that we're receiving, or that we're going to be talking about, that are all related to a person needing and utilizing a special needs trust. And it's also important to understand that the benefit dictates how disbursements are made from a special needs trust. That is so important. Can we have the next slide, please?
Yolanda, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So we have a person that would like to come to the trust, and these are pretty complicated, different variety of services that are available for people. And as you're describing, it's not black and white by any means, right?
No, not at all.
So how do you screen? And maybe you're going to talk about that later, but it would seem like this is pretty specialized for each individual that's coming to you. And I know we had like a quality of life plan or something. Do you still do that?
Yes, we do. I'm going to talk about that a little later when we get
into
of the trust and how it works. So you may ask, okay, well, is this legal? Yes, it is actually. And I'm going to adjust my screen because I'm blocking part of it with the slide, with the pictures. So the opportunity to use special needs trusts came about under the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993. It was a huge act, but a portion of that act focused on folks that had disabilities and their ability or their opportunity to use special needs trusts to ensure that they have access to funds to enhance their quality of life. It's called the OBRA 93. And in that act, specifically related to people with disabilities and special needs trusts, they created 3 exceptions to the rule for counting assets or that are transferred to a trust. The first is an individual special needs trust. An individual, when you hear someone say, oh, I have an individual special needs trust, that means that they or someone else went to an attorney, they had the attorney draft their special needs trust document, and that document, if it's a self-settled trust, needed to be submitted to Social Security and Medicaid, state Medicaid, in the state or jurisdiction they live, and they had to get their stamp of approval on it. Those trusts can typically cost, with hiring the attorney to draft it, anywhere from $3,000 up to, I've seen it, $20,000, depending upon how complicated the special needs trust may be. So standalone trust, and then once they submit that document to Social Security and Medicaid, and they put their stamp of approval on it, then you must find a trustee to manage that trust. A lot of times, folks that have millions of dollars will have an individual special needs trust that can be managed by a bank. It could, and which we call a corporate trustee. It could be managed by an attorney, an estate planning attorney. It could be managed by a family member, depending upon, of course, how much money and who the trust is for. And in parentheses, you'll see with the individual special needs trust and the pooled special needs trust, I have in parentheses, it could.
We want to make sure you guys can see the screen.
Right. Please mute so that we don't hear you. Thank you. So it can be self-settled, or it can be a third party. When I say self-settled, that means that the money belongs to the person for whom the trust is intended to benefit. Excuse me. For a third party, it's typically a third party, a parent, a grandparent, a friend, anyone other than the beneficiary themselves that create the document. And it's typically part of their estate plan that they create that. They name the trust that they created for on behalf of the person with the disability in their will or their estate plan, so that assets that they leave would go from their ownership directly into that third party trust. The wonderful thing about the third party trust, and some of you may think the negative thing about self-funded trust, is that a self-funded trust, should a beneficiary have it and they pass away, then the money, then Medicaid has a right to recover. And if this is important, Medicaid has a right to recover whether you have a special needs trust or not. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Medicaid, because they say, listen, we are going to provide your medical benefits because you are considered as not having assets or income to qualify, or you're not working. But if you pass away and there are funds remaining in your trust account, we have first right of lien, and not just your trust account. If you own a home, if you have assets in a bank, Medicaid has a right to recover some of those assets up to what they paid out for your care. For a third-party trust, they have no right, because the money, remember, it went from the person that created the trust or any third party directly into the third-party trust, benefiting the person with disabilities. I am always encouraging parents, grandparents, loved ones, friends, if they have someone that has a disability, that they should consider a third-party trust, because then they can tell or direct the trust as to who the beneficiary should be, and who will receive the remaining beneficiary or the remaining funds in the account should the beneficiary pass away. That is not the case necessarily for self-funded trust. Medicaid has first right of lien, and then if there's any funds remaining in the account, then it can go to whomever they name as the beneficiary. The second type of trust is a Miller trust. I'm not going to talk about that because Maryland and most of the jurisdictions that we are approved to work in, they don't recognize a Miller trust. It's a disability income trust for retirees. But then the third trust is the trust that Shared Horizons manages, and it's a pooled special needs trust. Again, it can be self-settled or it can be third party. All of the trusts must follow and adhere to the sole benefit rule and have a Medicaid payback language for the self-funded trusts. And that's really important. I think the most difficult thing for us as a fiduciary to really help our beneficiaries understand is that sole benefit rule. It's very difficult for a mom who has a special needs trust, and we're saying to her, because she wants to purchase specific things for her children, or she wants to purchase something for her husband, or her partner, or she wants to donate to her church, we have to say, but that's not a sole benefit. We're violating the sole benefit rule, and we're unable to do that. So that's one of the cons of when I say cons, I mean pros and cons, the good and the bad of managing a trust, is that whole sole benefit rule. Next slide, please. Unless you have a question, Jeanette.
Does anybody have a question? I know this is a lot of information.
I'm trying to do it slow because I know that I can get wordy.
No, it's going very well. If anybody, you please just, raise your hand and just, turn your mic on if you do have a question. Karen?
Yep, sorry, I used the wrong thing, but but I am clapping too. My question is, we have set up our special needs trust for our boys, but some people I have talked to, they haven't set anything up yet. Is there language they should have in a special need, in their will or whatever, that, okay, the special needs trust can come when there's money to go into it?
Right. So you're talking about going to an estate planning attorney that's drafting your will. And in that will, there must be language in there of your intent for your assets to go into a special needs trust on behalf of your son or your daughter, or whomever that the loved one is. And that's really important too, because if you don't do that, then your estate will be dispersed according to law. And that means that they're going to provide assets or give assets to a person with a disability, and those assets will jeopardize those public benefits. So once whether you're doing a standalone trust, then you're going to have to make sure that you put in there the name of the trust that you want your assets to go into on behalf of the beneficiary. And someone is saying they use Miller Trust to help participants maintain. Awesome. So I'm not sure what state that person is from, but and please, if you are in one of the jurisdictions that we serve, I would like to talk to you to see. Kentucky. Okay, I didn't think that you were from. Yes, that is true, that Kentucky allows that, New York allows that, and there are a number of other states that do allow Miller Trust. But the DC metro area, they do not recognize Miller Trust at this point. So
can you just tell us what the Miller Trust, in a couple sentences, what it is?
A Miller Trust is for a person who is retired that now find that they have a disability and they need to qualify for certain benefits because of their disability. But they are receiving they have too much income from their Social Security or from their retirement benefits to qualify. So they can name the trust, they can transfer have those assets transferred into the trust, and the trust then makes disbursements. So it's sort of an in and out. The funds go in, the trust pays for whatever the person needs, and it's typically at a zero balance or sometimes a very small amount remaining at the end of the month.
I got it.
So Karen, you had another question?
Yeah, so like I said, we've already funded a special needs trust, but I have some families I work with who don't really have money to put into a trust right now, but they know there's other family members, or they know there'll be a life insurance or whatever that can go into it. Do they have to have special language other than saying it's going into a trust?
So they need, right. So they would need to identify that it should go into a third-party trust, and their instruction will be whoever the executor is or whoever is handling the estate to establish that third-party trust on behalf of their loved one.
Okay, and so they need to make sure the trustee has that information, or the executor, I'm sorry, has that information. They don't necessarily need to put that information in the will.
And the other key, and this is where a lot of people forget this step, that's the first step. Then the second step is, if you name a person or a benefit to go to your loved one into the third party trust, you have to change the beneficiary designee on your annuities, your life insurance policies. A lot of people forget that step. And once you are gone, no one can change your beneficiary designees. The courts can, but it can be cumbersome to go through that process. So the first step is to name it in your estate plan or your will. The second step to that is to go through, comb through all of your benefits, all of your insurance policies, everything that you own, all of your assets, so that you name the trust as the beneficiary designee for your loved one, or for that person.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So, so people can choose from the types of trusts. And I also mentioned that Maryland and DC, we do not recognize the Miller Trust, but there are two options, and I've already talked about them. The Individual Special Needs Trust, where I've already shared, you draft you hire the attorney to draft the document, and then you have to get that, if it is a self-funded trust, you have to get that approved by Social Security and the Office of Attorney General. And then you have to find a trustee. The Pooled Special Needs Trust, this is what we do at Shared Horizons. We are a nonprofit. You must be a nonprofit organization to manage a pooled special needs trust. So you have to be a 501c3. And the Pooled Special Needs Trust, or the nonprofit, hires the attorney to draft the master trust document. The master trust document is just one document that is approved by Social Security and the Office of Attorney General in the state, each state that the trust will serve. And once they put their stamp of approval on it, then the master trust document exists until they say it does not. The only thing people need to do to join the trust is to complete and sign a joinder agreement. That joinder agreement is the legally binding document that establishes the person's relationship with the trust and that establishes their sub-account. A lot of people will say that it is much more cost effective to do a pooled special needs trust. You can see why. You don't have to hire the attorney. That part is already done. The nonprofit already hired the attorney to create that master trust document. The only thing we need to do ongoing with our attorney is whenever Social Security and Medicaid makes a rule change, then we have to add that rule change to our master trust document, resubmit it to Social Security and the Office of Attorney General so that they can see that we've added it to our master trust document. But you know, there's nothing that the individuals that are part, or the folks that are part of the Pooled Special Needs Trust has to do. It all depends upon, it all lies upon the nonprofit that is managing the trust to make those adjustments and changes. Next slide, please. Okay, so you have a trust. Now what? And I'm going to talk specifically about what Shared Horizons does. And it's also important for you to understand that the model that we created for Shared Horizons is as much of a person-centered model as possible. And the reason I say as possible is because Social Security and Medicaid, they are not person-centered. They have a lot of rules and regulations that are just not in the best interest of the person that's receiving the benefit, because they make them jump through hoops. There are a lot of things that they disallow. So we operate and we try to be as person-centered as possible. So once you sign the joinder, whether it is a third-party trust or it is a self-funded trust, or I'm sorry, third-party or self-funded, then once that is received, and once we have funding for your account, you will receive a welcome packet. In that welcome packet, it provides an overview of what to expect, how the trust works. It gives you instructions on how to make requests, what kinds of requests can be paid from the trust. It just provides a lot of general information for each beneficiary. And then after that, and we make sure that a trust plan, or we call ours a quality of life plan, is developed. Remember, we have been approved by public benefits, right? Social Security and Medicaid. We have to follow their rules. But doing the quality of life plan or a trust plan gives the beneficiary voice to how they see this trust benefiting them. Now, they can give that voice, but we still have to follow Social Security and Medicaid and housing rules when making disbursements. We want to review, and part of that developing that quality of life plan for us is we want to review the rules for each government benefit that they're receiving. We want to explain to them how that beneficiary or how that benefit engages the trust and how the trust engages that benefit. We want to discuss the beneficiary's needs and wants, because there are some beneficiaries, their needs are met and they just have quality of life things that they want to do. They want to take a vacation. They want to refurnish their home. They want to travel. They want to, they want to take a class. They want to make sure that their computer equipment is up to date. Those are all wants. We want to make sure that those are included and we have an understanding of how they see this trust working for them. And then we want to identify their support network. Their support network can be a host of people. It is whoever they say their support network is. It can be a spouse. It can be a provider agency. It could be a family member other than a spouse. It could be a friend. It could be a pastor. We've worked with a number of pastors in the past. And then we want to make sure that, well, let me go back and say, identifying the support network is important, because remember I said that for a self-funded trust, if a beneficiary passes away, then Medicaid has a right to first lien, right? But if there's money remaining after Medicaid takes their lien or provides their lien, then the beneficiary, when doing the quality of life plan, can identify who will receive whatever remains after Medicaid after we satisfy Medicaid's lien. The interesting thing, and the reason it's important for us to understand and know their support network, is because that part of the process I take care of. And oftentimes we have people coming out of the woodworks that we had no idea was involved with the person when there's an opportunity, or they think there's an opportunity for them to receive funds. And it can be contentious at times because a lot of beneficiaries don't have relationships with the folks that are calling us and trying to get the information. They just know that they had money somewhere and they found out that we were holding it, and they want to make sure that they get it. And we have to explain to them, if you are not listed, if the beneficiary did not list you to receive their, or as their beneficiary designee, then there's not a thing we can do. The money, we have to follow the beneficiary's guidelines and direction. And it can cause issues after the beneficiary passes away. But we learn to deal with that. And we try to be as understanding as possible while still honoring what our beneficiary wants us to do, should there be a remaining designee or funds remaining. And then from that, we develop a budget. And this is really important too, because the quality of life gives them voice. And then we take all of that information, we take their needs, we take their wants, and we develop a budget. We also ask them how long they see this trust lasting for them. Many beneficiaries have a small amount. So we have to work with them to say, okay, you have this amount of money. It may not last, it will not last your lifetime. So what are the things that you want us to focus on that will most enhance your life the most? And we create a budget around that. We look at the larger expenses and we sort of back that out so that we have an understanding and they have an understanding of what their month-to-month or quarterly or annual budget will be. And that budget will change annually or as events occur. life happens, it's a living document. So we want to make sure that we are revisiting that budget accordingly. And then we go through the process of making requests, and we want to make sure that their life is enhanced. And there is a process to that. And I know that many of our beneficiaries become frustrated, but the reason we have the process, and the process is, it starts with them making the request. There's usually a form that they complete. They submit that form. They can email it to us. They can fax it to us. They can bring it to the office. They can mail it, which we may not get if they mail it, because mail has been quite troublesome these days. But there are a lot of different ways that they can make sure that we get that request. And then the trustee assigned to them will review that document, and they will look at the quality of life plan. They'll look at what their budget is, and they'll look at how much money they have remaining in the trust. They'll look at whether it meets the sole benefit rule. And if it's yes to all of those, and then also some other areas that they focus on, then they will approve the request. Sometimes the trustee will say, we can do this, but there's another entity that can perhaps pay for this. That is part of our job as a fiduciary, to sort of manage the trust in a way that if there is an opportunity for something to be paid from another entity, we're going to go to that other entity for payment. And then we can utilize, and that preserves the trust for another day and another month, and depending upon how much it is, another year for them to utilize the trust. So that's what happens when people come to us and they want to utilize the trust. And I mentioned sometimes it's not the best. They're not always happy with us in managing the trust. But the reason I shared the public benefits piece is so that everybody understands that we have to follow those rules. We will jeopardize their benefits. And the worst is if Social Security finds that we violated their rules and they impose a penalty, the person may owe them $20,000, depending upon how long they were receiving that disbursement from the trust and how long they received their full benefit amount. And that's what we're trying to avoid, because the trust can be used to truly enhance lives, but our goal is to not jeopardize any public benefits in doing so. Now, I mentioned earlier that sometimes we do break the rule. And that's because it really is in the best interest of the beneficiary for us to break that rule. The best example I can give is, we live in the DMV. Our beneficiaries live in either DC, most of them live in DC and Maryland. Rent is crazy in this area. It is difficult to find, unless you have subsidized housing, it is difficult to find a place to rent for under $1,500, sometimes even $2,000. If you factor in a SSI benefit, which is $841, and they don't have subsidized housing, how are they going to live? We are not going to have a beneficiary that has money in the trust homeless, unless they choose to be homeless. We're going to break the rule, and we're going to pay that. Now, the important thing that our trust administrators will do in doing that is they will make sure that they understand we are breaking the rules. We should not do this. It doesn't mean that we cannot do it, but we should not do it. And it's going to cause a reduction in your SSI by 1/3 because we are paying housing expenses, right? So as long as they understand that their SSI is going to be reduced by 1/3, we will continue to pay whatever their rent is going forward. And we will revisit that depending upon how much they have in the trust, because the worst case scenario is we're paying someone's rent They've made no other arrangements for a reduced rent rate or a changing of switching apartments, and then their trust is gone, and now they're back to square one of being homeless, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So we will work with them to make sure that they understand, hey, we only have enough left in the trust to pay for one additional year. This last year, we've got to work on finding you affordable housing, because your trust will not be available going forward after the year. So we don't want you to be homeless. So those are all things that a good trustee would do on behalf of their beneficiary. Can we have the next slide, please? So there's nothing basic about the disbursement rules for us. I think I shared a little bit about this, but we do have to follow, and these are the rules that we have to follow. SSI says, Social Security says that a person receiving SSI, we are prohibited from paying for basic needs. That is housing, food, and cash. Cash is treated a little differently, but let me talk about the housing and the food. Again, I just shared with you all that it's going to cause a 1/3 reduction in their SSI. So for most people, that means, I think it's like $200 and some $300 that's going to be reduced, but we're paying their rent, and we can then pay their food, because Social Security is only going to reduce them one time by 1/3. And then Medicaid, we can't supplant that benefit by paying for services that are covered by that benefit, unless Medicaid paid their portion for the time period. The best example I can give is someone wears glasses, and Medicaid will cover or pay for a pair of glasses every 2 years. But come on, people break them, they lose them, they just want another pair. So then after Medicaid pays for that pair and the 2-year period is not up, then we can certainly come in and we can pay for as many pair as they want during that time period or that gap where Medicaid will not cover that benefit. And then I've already mentioned subsidized housing. Any regular payments for utility services may be counted as income and increase the beneficiary's monthly rate. That's a sticky one, and fortunately, HUD Housing has not really focused on adhering to all of those rules that they've initiated. But the day is going to come that they're going to start reviewing that much more closely. I'm a little over. I'm sorry, Jeanette. Next slide.
Okay. That's okay, Yolanda.
Was that the last slide? Okay. So then just very quickly, all requests, and I mentioned this, starts with the completion of the request form. The trustee must evaluate, sole benefit rule. I talked about this earlier, making sure that it doesn't supplant the benefits, making sure that it aligns with the quality of life plan, the budget, and trust policies. And then, of course, we ask the question, is there enough funds in the trust? And then if it's approved, the trustee will disperse by a check, a credit card, or an upload. We use a PEX card, PEX, personal exchange card, for our beneficiaries. The thing about the PEX card is Social Security will allow us to use that card, but we are still responsible for what the beneficiary uses that card for. That can be a difficult conversation to have, because of course we don't control the card per se. We can control how it's used by our master trust or our master account through PACS. We can say it can't be used at a liquor store. We put no cash back, no cash in an ATM, but our beneficiaries are quite resourceful. And some of them have learned how to get around some of those blocks that we put on. But anyway, the upload or the PEX card, we like it because it actually gives the beneficiary, while it can be difficult for us to manage, it gives our beneficiaries independence and the ability to make decisions for themselves without having to come to the trust for every little thing. It is a courtesy. Not every beneficiary has a card. Not every beneficiary is able to use a card. And of course, we have beneficiaries that have a card, don't follow the rules, don't provide us with receipts, because again, we are still responsible for the money we put on the card and how it's used. So we have to have receipts to show that should Medicaid or Social Security come in and they audit us, they're going to want to see how people are using those the PECS card. And unfortunately, if they see that they're utilizing it for things that would violate their agreement with SSI, then it can jeopardize their benefits. So while it provides the beneficiary with the independence, and we love that because we don't want our beneficiaries to be dependent upon us for every little thing. We want them to be able to utilize the trust at their discretion, but in doing that, we still have to follow the rules and regulations put upon us by the public benefit they're receiving.
So Yolanda, the use of these cards also provide that receipt that they need if they need to report or show receipts, that is all already there for them?
Yes. And the other nice thing about the PECS card is that for our savvy beneficiaries, and Alvina can talk about this, she's on the panel, you can actually upload your receipts to your card so that we have access to that, so that you don't have to worry about, there were days that my staff would just look at me when people dropped off their receipts because they were just like 50 receipts balled up. Remember IRS talking about people when they get audited coming in with shoe boxes of balled up receipts. That's how we were feeling because we had to scan those receipts in because that's the only way we can maintain them. Well, now with what Alvina is doing, uploading them whenever she can to the portal, it saves her time and it saves us for having time and having to scan them in. They can also scan them and then email them to us, or they can fax us the receipts. We're trying to get away from managing the actual paper receipts as people are trying to become green. We're still working on it, but we have a little ways to go.
We had an advocate last week, Yolanda, who shared with everyone that she had a SSI overpayment issue and that she had not kept track of the receipts because during the pandemic, the mail wasn't working and local offices were closed. There was a lot of issues. And I think the fact that you have this in place is so important. And it would be wonderful if Social Security would allow beneficiaries to upload receipts. It just sounds like this is a technology issue that really, can help people that have been, are going through this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think there's just one more thing before you introduce your panel, because I know from serving on a board for a pool trust that people don't really understand that the background, the board is made up of attorneys, CPAs. We had a structured settlement man who's very well known, who helped us develop an asset model that I don't know what model you're using these days, but I have to tell you, it was all very conservatively and really invested wisely. And this is not something that we leave up to like the trust manager, we have experts who volunteer their time. And we also, when I was president, I remember we put on retainer an attorney so that when we did have issues, I don't know if you're still doing this, Yolanda.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had issues, with the beneficiary. We had one couple, he had spent all his money. And he had come to us and wanted to know why. And of course, everything was documented. All his requests were mostly for healthcare expenses. And it was just unfortunate. But many of the beneficiaries that were in our trust were not wealthy. They were not people that had worked like Miller eligible trust people. These were people that, you know, maybe inherited. In those days, it would have been like a $50,000, you know, something from a home or something. They were small. And then we had the extreme of, I remember this case, Yolanda, when a gentleman came and wanted his son to open a trust for, you know, and put hundreds of thousands in it. And we discouraged him because we said, this is not the right structure for you, given the resources. And he goes, no, we already have that kind of trust. I want him to have some autonomy, and I want him to be able to have the management and the opportunities that this particular trust offered. And so there's much more that goes on behind the scene than what Yolanda has shared, because there's a management of this money. And we had that with major management, national companies that we met with regularly. So there's a lot of behind the scenes that goes on. And all of that is, the majority of that is volunteer. It's, you know, incredible people in the field that have been there. So I'm going to stop there and let you introduce the panel, Yolanda.
So if we can cut to Shared Horizons, do you have your camera on? We have, and I'm not sure if we have all three of our beneficiaries. But,
Sorry, we have all three. I just need to know who needs to speak first.
okay, so let me just introduce them first.
Oh,
Shaina, can you put them up on the bigger screen, you know, rather than the slides so that we can see them? There we go.
can you guys see your hand?
Yes, we can. So we have Terry. Raise your hand. Hi, Terry. Thank you. We have Elvina.
Hi, Alvina.
And we have Rudolph. We saved the male for last, Rudolph. So women first. That's why you're last. Hello. So the three persons that are in our conference room are our beneficiaries. And when Johnette and Amy asked me to identify and to give access, or not access, but invite three beneficiaries to come and talk about their experience, I wanted to make sure that we had a variety. So, and I want you all to say, to share with everyone the good and the bad. You know, there's a lot that goes into on our end managing the trust and following all the rules that we have to follow with so that we don't jeopardize your public benefits. I will have, why don't we just let Terry go first? And Johnette, take it away. I think Johnette has some questions for you.
Sure. Hi, Terry. Thank you for taking time today to share your experience of being a part of this trust. The first question is, could you share why you joined the trust?
My hands were tied behind my back. I had money that I had to secure for later on because of my illness. So therefore, in order for me to be protected and be able to survive out here, I had to come into the trust. Was it easy? No. But now I understand it was for my good. And I just learned to follow and work through the guidelines that the trusts have to follow for the entities that they have to answer for. And it works out fine for me. Sometimes I get a little discouraged because I can't go have a fling, but I figured it out for myself. Like the luxury items that you can't have, I now have them. So it does work. And I'm satisfied.
How has it improved your life, Terry?
Well, because certain things Medicaid and Medicare does not pay for, and because I had a stroke, and there's always going to be new advancements coming out, new things to help me get on my feet, it has helped me to be able to provide the things I need to make my life better. Because now there's money over here, but when a new device comes out to help me to walk, I had to purchase it. It was 6,000, but I was able to get it for 3,500. So it leaves me room to get the things that I need to make my life more livable.
And who helped you get it for 3,500? Was that part of the trust? Did someone help you get that?
No, the trust gonna do everything. Some things you have to learn to do on your own. So I do a lot of networking, and I find ways that I can use financial support from other avenues
Yep.
to meet my needs. And some businesses, if you ask them, you have to know what to ask too. So we have to become educators for ourselves and advocates for self first. And you ask, how else can I meet this goal? What can you offer me? How can we raise funds? And they tell you. They tell you. People will tell you. If you seek, you shall find.
Johnette, can I just interrupt you just for a moment? And my apologies. I'm used to calling her Miss Terry, and I'm but her name is Dana. So
Thanks, Miss Mazik.
So could you also tell us how you mentioned when you first started speaking about some things weren't easy, and were you alluding to the different rules that the trust had to follow because they're under Social Security and Medicare?
Yes, because let me be real clear about this. There was a period of time that I didn't have access to money, and I had lost my job, and all of my savings went into our day-to-day survival. Because not only did I have a stroke, but my husband had a stroke a year and a half later. So that took all of the money out of our house. Everything was gone. So I had to learn to live another way. And it was an adjustment. And then when I got into the trust, it was so many rules, and it was just overwhelming with somebody dictating to me, a person who's independent. I wasn't used to this role of somebody dictating to me. But now it's okay. They can dictate, Miss Aura, Miss Mazik. Yes, we've had fist fights, but it's okay today. I don't have to scratch them anymore. We get along fine.
you're too much, Dana.
Well, I just tell the truth. The
I
whole
appreciate
truth, so help me God.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you,
welcome.
Sherry.
So would you like to talk to Elvina next?
Sure.
Good afternoon. My name is
Hi,
Alvina.
Alvina.
The reason why I'm a beneficiary is because my mom passed away of a pulmonary embolism when I was 13. It took my grandmother a while to get the benefits or the structured settlements for my mom's death. And because I was under CPS, I think I was kind of like overspending, and I was giving my family members money as well. So they went back to CPS under Child Funding Services, went to Judge Shuker, told her what was going on, and then she had my guardian ad litem, Sabine Brown, come up here. Well, no, y'all guys was actually at another location. Y'all actually was at Friendship Heights.
Right.
So my guardian ad litem at that time took me to Friendship Heights, had me to sign the joint agreement and what have you like that. And that's how my funds came into Shore Horizons. So that's how I became a beneficiary, basically.
Uh-huh. So you had guidance, somebody helped direct you to them, to Shared Horizons. What was
Basically,
what
it
was
was
the
the
hardest thing for you when you first joined?
The hardest thing for me, or was for me, or is still for me, is adjusting to the whole idea of it, of just being a beneficiary, basically.
Elvina, you could go into detail. It's okay.
Y'all gotta forgive me because I got stage fright.
You
I
know
know
what?
you don't.
I shared with everybody that it's not always the pros. There are limitations, and sometimes there are issues related to it. So are you frozen? can you still hear us? Oh, no.
Oh, no, she looks frozen.
We lost them.
You think they'll reboot, Yolanda?
Yes, I'm gonna text them now. Darn it.
Does anybody have any thoughts as we're working through this topic here? Anybody want to?
I just want to say that this is so powerful, the ability to be able to hear not only, this is Amy, by the way, not only to hear the information in a context that is digestible and understandable. So thank you for that, Yolanda. But it's also nice, oh, there they are, to hear the advocates.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy.
Sorry about that. Can you guys still hear us?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Give me one moment.
Alina, I think we left off. Yolanda was giving you permission to share with us.
Comcast is actually expensive then.
So you guys are back online.
Yeah, that's what I meant to do for my husband's stuff, because this bill 224.
They can hear you.
But
They can hear you. They can hear you. Okay.
So Elvina, please do continue. And you know, be honest. I know that you are nothing but honest. So I'm gonna sit back, wait for
so
it.
basically, that's how I became a beneficiary.
So you were talking about the struggle and
So the struggle for me is to keep filling a receipt, trying to stay in the guideline and the policies of Social Security with Medicaid and Medicare.
Yeah, yeah.
That's part of my struggle, just trying to stay in the guidelines and the policies of what you guys tell me to do as far as my receipts, what can I do with my PAX card, stuff like that. That's my only trouble. And then while dealing with this, while I'm getting benefits from Social Security or what have you, I've been wanting to have employment, but it's so hard to do because I'm like, well, if I go to work, they're gonna make my rent go up and stuff like that. I had to pay them back $2,000 on the hood just from working. $2 grand.
Wow.
So that's just basically what my struggle is. That's all.
Yeah. Tell me, Alina, how has the trust helped you the most?
They've helped me with clothing shopping, vacations, getting my hair braided, just like different stuff, transportation.
So important things.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, how long have you been a beneficiary of the trust?
I've been a beneficiary under Share Horizons since I was 18. I'm now 34.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's wonderful. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, that's about it.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate hearing from you. And
No
best of
problem.
luck to you. Thank you.
Thank
Alina.
you.
I think now we have Rudolph.
Hello.
Hi, Rudolph.
Hello.
You can put your mask on.
Rudolph, how long have you been a part of the trust?
4 or 5 years now.
Okay. And could you share with us why you joined this trust?
I had a settlement, and my lawyer said it needed to go in a trust. I said, trust? What? Put it in a bank. I have a bank account. You know, She said, "Nah, man, you need to go in the trust, or if Social Security finds out, I'm gonna snatch it." And I said, "Oh,
Okay. So what has been, the pros and cons of being a part of the trust for you?
Not too many cons, because when I first became a beneficiary, I was in a nursing home, and so I used the card or used the money to buy personal items like body wash and socks and underwear and that type of thing. So
Mhm. Mhm. Could you also share with us, Rudolph, how has this really improved your life?
it's or now that I'm on my own, it's I see it as kind of extra income. But, I don't,
We don't use the word income, not.
Okay.
I don't want Social Security to hear that word.
I'm sorry, funds.
Right, is having the access to funds that are going to preserve your benefits also at the same time.
My mistake.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us that about the trust that would help us all understand how to better do this, or?
My shoes, my shoes.
Oh yeah, I buy shoes probably once or twice a year. When I was in the nursing home, I had long hair and was getting my hair braided, so I used the money for that. Travel expenses. I always I'm part of Transport DC, and that those funds help me travel throughout the city. So yeah, yeah, transportation.
So it did improve your life.
Yes, because before that I would have to ask my mommy for money. So now I don't have to.
Is there something, Rudolph, that you would like the trust to do maybe a little differently that they haven't done, or that you'd like a service added? Is there something that?
I know it's I know y'all can't, but what if at all possible, make it so that we can get cash.
That's what I was about to say.
But I know y'all can, but
I know we've always wanted that, but it's just not part of the deal. Yes.
So again, I know that this is not, but we can only do $20 without jeopardizing your benefit. Anything beyond that, they're going to reduce it dollar for dollar. And that's why we don't do cash. Unless you don't have SSI. If you have SSDI, then it's a whole nother story.
Right.
But again, and like you said, Ms. Mazik, there are ways around everything.
And we know that you all exercise and find those ways. And you know what? I'm not mad at you all. You do what you need to do, and that's key. You do what you need to do to get what you need, and when the trust can help, you work with us, and when we can't, you guys figure it out.
And Mr. Z, that was hard. That was the hard part, because in my case, I owe folks money. You know what I'm saying? When I first came, that was my biggest problem with you guys. But I had to learn to get around that. Because what I did was I just dumped other stuff that I could legally dump on you, and then I took care of what I needed to do. And then we met in the middle. And I thank y'all for that, being patient. Thank you so much.
And that's what we say to everyone, you know, because we can't pay someone if we don't have, if it's not because a lot of times people are waiting for a settlement and they don't have any money coming in, and they have friends and family that pay for goods and services for them or provide them with cash. And now that they have the money, they want to repay them. But it's a sticky situation because Social Security says we can't do that because it's not an expense that has a service connected to it. So, so we always tell our beneficiaries, listen, let us pay for A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Take that off your plate so that you can then do what you feel you need to do with the income or with the cash benefit you have coming in. And that's exactly what Dana did.
Right. There's a
But you
question.
also protected me too. It protected because I'm one of them people that I don't like depending on nobody. And I feel if you do something for me, I want to compensate you. And it's not always about compensation. I had to learn that. You know, so it was the trust is, like I said, the trust has been good to me. I can't complain. It was an adjustment. I'm over it. I take a little aspirin, I go to sleep. But I can deal with you. You know what I mean? This Mosaic.
I hear you, Dana.
There's a question, Yolanda, asking if anybody is working or working part-time.
Oh, I'm getting ready to start.
No, I finished school 2 years ago for medical assistant.
I'm getting ready to I'm working the polls, girl. I gotta work the polls. I got my outfits ready, babe. I'm ready to go. Got my schedule. And the polls make good, ladies. Y'all need to join. 125 for the prime for this one, and 300 for the real one. Okay,
Really?
y'all better go.
Really? 'Cause I know
You're
what you
talking
mean.
about managing the voting polls?
Yes, ma'am. You know I like polls.
I know what you mean.
My name is Medea. I like polls.
Excellent, excellent. Yolanda, of the trust, I know there's what, 600 beneficiaries or so?
700 and
Yeah, I know, you know, a while ago I can't remember what the statistic was, the percentage working. It was, do you have that number?
I don't, not off the top of my head, but we do have some beneficiaries that are employed and they use the trust as a savings account in lieu of an ABLE account. And again, that's something that I didn't talk about, but we try to work in tandem with ABLE accounts. If the person has enough money in their account and they are able to establish an ABLE account, then, you know, we encourage them to do so. We transfer money over on a quarterly basis, and that's based upon their budget and how much money they have in their trust. And we say to them, listen, get an ABLE account because you can then pay for your rent, you can pay your utilities, and it will not jeopardize your benefits. The key is that you got to learn that you must manage that cash. You know, some of our beneficiaries still struggle with having access to those kinds of funds, but it's a learning process.
Right.
Question. I'm looking for a job now. If I'm able to live off my SSI, can I put my job check in the trust?
Yes, yes, you can. But you need to work with someone like, and perhaps Johnette and her group here can refer you to someone, but you need to work with someone and they're going to tell you how many hours you can work without it impacting your benefit.
Right.
Yeah. There's another question, Johnette, and they're asking how earned income is managed and discussed with the financial counseling provided. So I'm assuming you're talking about the interest earnings that our beneficiaries earn with their money on a monthly basis. So our asset allocation model is 40-60 right now, 40% invested in equities and 60% broken into 3 columns, 20% of that always kept in cash, 20% in laddered CDs, and 20% in mutual funds and bonds, mutual funds that are considered short-term enough to be considered cash. That 60% that I'm talking about, that's you earn interest on a monthly basis. And then the dividends, if you have over $25,000 in the trust, you earn equities, or you earn dividends on the equities on a quarterly basis. So the way that it's handled is that money is then put back into their trust account. So if they don't receive it, they don't have to report it, only if it reaches a certain amount of income earned. And when we do our 1041, which is the tax reporting form that the trust must use, then we provide grantor letters to our beneficiaries. If they had enough or a significant amount in earnings that would necessitate a return, then they would file the return. Awesome. So Carolyn's providing, she's providing good information. Can we have some of this chat that we can forward on to our beneficiaries?
Janet, would you mind copying and pasting the info in the chat box and sending it out? Is that okay, Janet, after this call?
Amy, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was just, so Yolanda was mentioning that Carolyn Wheeler is putting some really good information in the chat, and her request was, can we copy and paste the contents of the chat and send it out? So I was asking you, yes, so if you can please do that when we're done, we can make that happen, Yolanda.
I will do that.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Thanks, Turner.
Jeanette, I don't know, where are you? Do you have any other questions or?
Well, I think it's, putting it out to the group if anyone else has any other questions. This has been an incredible time together, and I just cannot thank you enough, and the panelists that came on. Does anybody have, hi, Amy's here, yeah.
I have a quick question, and I know there's some stuff coming in the chat, but I have a question for beneficiaries. It's super great to hear your story, and thanks for being on. My question is, what would you tell someone else who maybe wants to get a trust or is unsure? What would your tips or your advice be to them?
To ask questions and get more than one, look at more than one company.
That or get a lawyer to help that, or somebody else to help you.
And the reason I say that is because I thought that my last client's mother would be helpful to me, but she wasn't, because whoever her trust was, they dictated to her what she could and could not buy for her child. Her child was the beneficiary who was injured upon birth. They dictated to the mother where her clothes could come from. And no way could you tell me that I had to buy my baby's clothes out of Walmart. Because as soon as you wash them the second time, they're no more good.
It's gonna be gone.
So that was money being wasted. So I would encourage somebody before they make a decision on a trust. And I told people twice about Shared Horizons. Do your homework, see what they got to say, because they all work different.
And Dana, didn't someone try to set you up with a trust company outside?
Yes, and I'm glad I had the bad attitude that I did, and I didn't go with it. Because they came off the break wrong. They didn't come in humble like you and just give me the rules quietly. And it turned me off, and I'm glad it did. Because I would have never met you.
Oh, thank you, Dana.
Yes,
Those were some good tips. We have a couple more questions in the chat. Shall I read them?
Yeah, I think Yolanda, you might want to address the one, I don't know if you've seen it here, the one on the ABLE.
Sure. So third party, special needs. So the question is, I'm not sure if this is an ABLE question or a third party special needs trust question. A special needs financial advisor recently told me that he knows of several attorneys who have transferred money from a third party special needs trust directly into a disabled person's ABLE account without reporting that money to Social Security as income. That is correct. So it's not just a third party trust, it's a self-funded trust as well that you can transfer assets or funds from the trust account into an ABLE account. And but keep in mind that Social Security, they monitor everything. And it's important for everybody to know that they've always had access through the IRS to connect or to find money that belonged to people. They've always had it. Now they are using it. So the same applies to ABLE accounts. They know what you all have out there, but you can transfer from a third-party trust as well as a self-funded trust into an ABLE account. We do it all the time. We have a number of beneficiaries that have ABLE accounts.
Excellent.
Just know that then makes the money, Laura, subject to Medicaid estate recovery unless your state passes legislation, which we're looking at doing maybe here in Kentucky. So I just wanted to commend you, Yolanda. I'm involved with the Pooled Special Needs Trust here in Kentucky. We have fabulous stories too. It's just so thank you. I just want to say thank you. And for you all to find out if you have a Pooled Special Needs Trust in your community, because really the stories that were shared today, it helps people maintain a quality of life that they would not be able to have otherwise and still maintain their eligibility for much needed benefits. So
Right.
I really appreciate your presentation today. So thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Carolyn. We have a question, final question down here, Yolanda, from, I think this is for the panelists, from Peter. This is from Peter Pike, I think Colorado. What did it take for you to decide to participate with the trust? And I think we heard that a little bit. One of you had a stroke, one of you, could you just address that a little bit again for the Peter?
It was my lawyer's idea.
How about we start with, is it Rudolph?
Yeah, Rudolph, he just responded. Can you repeat that, Rudolph?
It was my lawyer's idea.
Your lawyer?
Yes.
Rudolph, did you come to us kicking and screaming?
No. He said, it has to go in the trust, or if I give you a check and you cash it, not the IRS, Social Security will definitely
They will.
And you
So
know
the-
what? In my case, if I hadn't went to the trust because I owed Social Security, they would have taken their money off the top. But because of the trust, they can't touch me. And then they have to stick to the original agreement I had before I acquired any money. And I paid them $100 a month. But it was Social Security's fault that I got in trouble. And that's what I stood on the whole time we fought. It was their own fault. I never missed a meeting. When they called me in, I always went. They knew I was working. It was called Back to Work Program at that time. That's what it was called. But you've got to know your rights. Again, you must be informed whether it's the trust or you're dealing with Social Security. Because everybody has guidelines. And like me at the end of this, they'll say to us, those of us who have property, like Ms. Mazik said earlier, Medicaid has the right to come back for all of their money or a portion thereof. They have that right. So you gotta be smart. Do what you gotta do.
Okay. I think what, I'm hearing from this conversation, especially this last question, is the importance of having a relationship with some of your attorneys that are dealing with cases like this to understand the services that are available in the community, like the services that Sharon Rises and what's going on in Kentucky. How important it is. I know, Yolanda, you did a lot of marketing in the early years to all of the different attorney associations, elder law, and I know the Special Needs Alliance, which is a group around the country of attorneys that specialize in this area, is a very special group. And, you know, these are the guys that understand the importance of, you know, there's different solutions for everybody's profiles that are coming in. And as we only heard a focus today, really on this particular one, but there's many many different ones to choose from. Unfortunately, we have gone over a minute of our time, but I cannot thank you, Yolanda, and the panel for being here, and for all of you to join this call today. And we will see you again next week. We will be talking about Medicaid buy-in program, and I just, you know, this has just been wonderful. So thank you, Amy, thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, and the beneficiaries. And we'll send meeting materials through the listserv, and Sharon will send out the chat. So take care. Great job, Yolanda.
All right.